Okay, so welcome back to my new video. This video, I'm going to be talking about Flux CD or Flux GitOPS. Okay, so Flux is just a set of continuous and progressive delivery solutions for Kubernetes that are open and extensible. It is a CNCF Incubating project. Not sure if it has graduated yet, but I just need to find out. So Flux provides GitHubs for both apps and infrastructure. Just all you need to do is to just push to Git repository, and then Flux does the rest. And it also works with existing tools like GitHub, GitLab, and BitBucket, S3 bucket, and so on. Flux is designed with security in mind. Flux also works with any Kubernetes and all common Kubernetes tooling like Kustomize, Helm, RBAC, and so forth. Flux does multi-tenancy and multi-everything, and it uses true Kubernetes RBACs via impersonation and support multiple GitHub repositories. And it also has a alerting system that notifies you about what is happening in your Kubernetes clusters. And it integrates with Slack, Discord, Telegram, WebEx, Microsoft Teams, and the rest. So if you look at the diagram below, the one with the hashtag GitOPS, so you are the user right here. And then what you're not allowed to do in your Kubernetes clusters is to use the kubectl apply to deploy your application to Kubernetes clusters. It's not allowed. So all you need to do is to commit your code and YAML files to Git repository, and then FluxCD is going to sync whatever you commit on GitHub or GitLab, whichever versioning platform you're using. And also you push your images to your container images to Docker Hub or whatever container registry you are using. And then FluxCD will pull those image metadata. So assuming you push your first version of your image, your second version, your third versions, FluxCD is going to pull those metadata and then sync that to FluxCD. And once FluxCD sync all this information, there is a memcache also deployed to your Kubernetes clusters. That is also going to be syncing the images or your Docker images metadata. Okay. And then once FluxCD gets all this information, it then apply the deployment to your Kubernetes API. And as you know, it's sync with the etcd, which is going to store every the etcd is just the database for your Kubernetes cluster. So etcd will then sync all this information. So basically, this is the architectural diagram for FluxCD, and it's very simple and straightforward. So we are just going to look at a simple demo. So I'm going to switch back to my terminal. Okay, so let me check get nodes. Okay, we have two nodes that are running currently. And then I'm going to create a namespace. So I'm going to say kubectl, create namespace called Flux. Okay, so, so currently the Flux namespace is created. So before we start, I'm going to show you something before we move on. Let me go to my Firefox. Okay, so before we start, we need to install Flux Ctl. So with this command, those who are using Mac OS, you use this command brew install, which I already did on my MacBook, so I'm not going to install it. Those using Linux, you can use this command to install it. Those using Windows, you can use the choco install. And yeah, so basically, I think that is it for the installation. So make sure that you install the Flux Ctl. And also, I have this GitHub repository. This is my repository. This is the link. I'm going to leave this in the description box so you can clone it and then do your demo with it. So notice that the branch is what master. And then I have two folders in this repository, which is the namespace and then the workloads. So the namespace, it has this one YAML file, which is going to create a namespace called Flux demo. And then the workloads has a deployment and then the service file. So let's look at the deployment file. The deployment file is just the kind is of deployment, the name, the namespace. So make sure that you add these annotations so that your deployment can work with FluxCD. So if you want to learn about these filters, you can visit this URL. So initially, I'm going to deploy this application with 2 replica sets. And the image is what? Hello app, and then 1.0. So this is the container name. So hello app, you make sure that you tag it appropriately here. You tag it appropriately. So whatever image you are using, make sure that you put it here. And then this container is running on container port 8080. We're going to go back to the service. So this is the name of the service in this Flux demo namespace. This is the service port, the target port, and then the type of service is called node port. We are going to change this, but we are going to start with node port. And then along the way, we're going to make some changes to these files. So basically, that is it for a start. Yeah, so I think let me switch back to the terminal again. So what we are going to do here is that we are going to say export GitHub user, which is, this is my username. So make sure that you replace it with your own GitHub username. Going to export that. And then I'm going to check Flux Ctl, which I already installed. And then I'm going to check for the version and see which version. So as you can see, I'm using version 1.25.1. Let me also see --help. So this is the Flux Ctl, helps you deploy your code. So let's run this Flux Ctl leaks workloads, which I don't think we have any workload. Yeah, we don't have any workload. Let me see in this namespace Flux. Yeah, we don't have any workload yet. But as you can see, the available commands are what? Automate, completion, deautomate, help, identity. This will display SSH public key. Install, list images, list workloads, log policy, release, save, sync, synchronize the cluster with the Git repository. Now we are going to be making use of sync as well as install. We have already looked at the version. Okay. We can also check the turn on automatic deployment for a workload. You can also look at this, but I don't think we need it now. And we're also going to be making use of K8s /ns, which is the namespace. And this is what namespace in which FluxD is running. The Flux daemon is running for creating a port forward to access the API. No port forward will be created if URL or token is given. You can also set the environment variable this. Default is default, okay? So we are going to make use of this. This will point, this flag will point to the namespace that we are working with, which is the Flux. Okay. So it's Flux Ctl install. So as you can see, we have already exported the GitHub user, and then we are passing in Git user, Git email, Git URL, Git path, which we already saw those two folders, namespace and then the workloads. And then the namespace we are working with is what? Flux. And then we pipe everything to kubectl apply -f, and then dash meaning that everything in that folder structure. Okay, so remember also that we have this folder, the hierarchy folder as Flux get started. So that is the top level folder before namespace folder and workloads folder. So make sure that you have all this in place, else you're not going to get it right. So make sure you follow the video very closely. So I'm going to run that. So as you can see, memcache was created. As I told you, that is going to sync all the images from our Docker Hub or whatever container registry you are using. The service account is also created. The cluster role RBAC was created. Cluster role binding also created. And then deployment. And then we also have a secret. And then the deployment memcache created. Okay. So basically that is it. So we're going to say kubectl -n Flux. We want to check the rollout status of our deployment Flux, which is this one. See, deployment Flux successfully rolled out. So what we are now going to do is for us to sync with our Kubernetes clusters from the GitHub repository, we are going to create an identity, okay? So that identity is called FluxCTL identity. And then -K8s. So what this is doing is we are just pointing this this SSH information to our Flux namespace. Okay, so as we saw before, what this K8s /ns means, this is just pointing to this namespace. Once I run that, it's going to generate the SSH RSA for me. So I'm just going to copy everything up to this point. Once, okay, I'm not going to copy it now, but let me visit. So I'm going to point, I'm going to visit this URL, okay? So this is my folder, Flux get started, settings, keys, /new. So make sure that you are logging into your GitHub repository. And also note that this one, Don Wani, is my GitHub username. So make sure that you replace it with yours, as well as the Flux get started, which should point to your folder. So I'm just going to visit this directory. So let's go to that screen. So I'm going to create a new tab and then paste in that URL. HTTPS. So now you see it brought me to this page from the settings. So I'm going to title it Flux-demo. Then I'm going to copy the SSH RSA key we generated from that command, and then paste. You see, this begins with SSH RSA, so you make sure that you paste everything. So as you see, SSH RSA, make sure that you copy everything and then paste it in this. And then make sure also that you allow write access. Okay, so check this and then add keys. Then confirm. So I have 2 of these, so I'm just going to delete one. Let me delete this. Yeah, so this is the new one I just pasted. Okay. So I just pasted this. So yeah, so I think you get the idea what we are trying to do. Just I used to have an old one which I was practicing with, so I just deleted that. So I think that is all you need to do here. And once you do that, we are going to sync everything. Okay. Let me switch back to my terminal. So what we are going to do now is to sync our repository to our Kubernetes clusters. So I'm going to, so with, by default, Flux Git pull frequency is set to 5 minutes. Every 5 minutes, your Kubernetes classes will sync with your GitHub repository. But because we don't have that time to wait 5 minutes, I'm just going to sync it now. Okay. So as we saw, FluxCTL sync help. So synchronize the cluster with the Git repository now. Okay, so we are going to use this command to sync the repository with our Kubernetes cluster using this K8s /ns string. Okay, namespace in which FluxD is running. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to say FluxCTL sync --K8s /, and then we point to the Flux namespace. You see, it says synchronizing with SSH GitHub, git at GitHub, blah, 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 blah. With this is my username, and this is the top level folder structure. So as you can see, it says we're done. Okay. So if we check get ns. So as you can see, the Flux demo is just created. We just got it created 2 minutes ago. You see? So now we have 2 namespaces. So let's check kubectl get all in the Flux demo namespace. You see, in our Flux get started, we started with two replicas. Okay, so it's been deployed for us. And then the service is what? Hello app demo, which is a node port, you remember? So if we check just Flux, so you can see Flux is deployed in the Flux namespace, and then the mem cache is also deployed. And yeah, we have 2 deployments and then a mem cache as a service. Okay, so our focus is going to be on the Flux demo because that is our application. Okay, so this one was deployed by Flux, but the focus here is this one, which is our application deployment, which is the Flux demo namespace. So what we are going to do now is we want to increase the replica set for our deployment. So currently it's 2 out of 2. So what we can do is we can change these values in our deployment file directly on our computer, and then we push it to GitHub repository. And after 5 minutes, it's going to sync with our Kubernetes classes, but we don't have that time. So I'm going to just do the changes manually from GitHub repository. Okay, so let's switch to our browser. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to go inside the workloads deployment and then click on edit. And then you see the replica set is 2. So I'm going to change it to 5. And then I'm going to also change the version to 1 to start with. It's already deployed, but I'm just going to change it to 1, and then we can play around with those values. And I'm going to apply changes. And also, I'm going to change the service, edit. Instead of node port, I'm going to call it load balancer. Load balancer, okay. So I'm going to save changes. Okay. So that is it. So now let's switch back to our terminal. You see, the changes hasn't reflected yet because it's going to take 5 minutes for it to take effect in our Kubernetes classes, but I'm going to force the changes. So I'm going to use kubectl sync, and then we point to the Flux namespace, not the Flux demo, because our controllers are all in this namespace, Flux namespace, where the mem cache is. So we are going to sync this. So it's synchronizing with our GitHub repository. Make sure that it's on the master branch. So it's done. So what we can do is we get all. And then you see, it's terminating and it's creating new container ports. You see, currently we have 5. You see, currently we have 5 ports that are running. So as a matter of fact, we just did the changes on our GitHub repository. We don't need to do kubectl apply or anything. So automatically the changes get reflected in our Kubernetes classes. So also you can see that the service is of type load balancer. And then we got this IP address that is going to be running on port 80. So I'm just going to copy this IP address. And then we can go to the browser. So I'm going to create a new tab and then paste in the IP address. So as you can see, the version is what 1.0.0. And let me refresh this. You see that it switched traffic to a new port. You see, it again switched traffic to a new port. Okay, so what I'm going to do next is that we have this app that is running. So I'm going to go to our GitHub repository again and do some changes. So deployment, edit. I'm going to do the changes to revert back to 2 replica sets, and then version 2 of our image. We're going to change that as well, and then commit changes. And with a service, I'm going to maintain everything in the service. Okay, I'm not going to touch it. And yeah, so that is it. I'm going to switch back to the terminal, and then we sync it because it's going to take 5 more minutes to sync. I'm going to sync it again with this command. Okay, it's done. So now if we check, we get all in the Flux demo. You see it's terminating. And then at the end of the day, we'll just have 2 ports. But again, we're going to have version 2 of our application. Okay, so let's check again. Okay, you see now it's been scaled down to 2 ports. But if we describe this pod, let's describe this pod and see which version of kubectl describe pod, the name of the pod. The name of the pod. And then in which namespace, Flux-demo. You see now the image, where is the image? You can see the image. Okay, so if I do this, let me clear this. And then we pipe it to grep image. You see, the image is what, version 2. Okay, that is what we are currently running. Okay. Well, let me switch back to our browser and see if the changes has affected. So I'm just going to refresh this page with our IP address. So you see, as I refresh, it reflected a new version of our application, which is the image for version 2 of our application. And as I keep refreshing, you see the port changes. Okay, yeah, so basically that is it for FluxCD. It's very simple and straightforward. So we just don't do kubectl apply. Once we do the continuous integration and continuous deployment from our Git repository, it gets synced to our Kubernetes clusters. Okay, so this approach is very similar to argocd, but with Flux doesn't have a web UI. That is the only difference. And Flux also comes with this alert notification with Slack, Telegram, WebEx, and all that. So I leave that to you to explore. And yeah, so I think that is it. Don't forget to like the video and share and subscribe. I'll see you in the next one.